Hello and welcome to episode 70 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg, as always with me is Neil.
Hello, Greg.
Hello, Neil. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, you?
Oh, getting there slowly. Before we move on, let us talk about Lil Legend Studios. So we've still got the contest running. You have to email in why you should get a free session with Miles, and we will pick one for whatever reasons we value out of all those, and you can send them into contest at theimperialtruth.com. And Miles, his Patreon's flying at the moment, so go and check that out on Patreon, and he offers video painting tutorials or one-to-one sessions, various other things like that. Basically, if you want something painted, he can either paint it for you or show you how to paint it.
And showing how to be painted is usually a good option as well.
Yeah, well, it
then
depends.
you know how to do it yourself.
Yeah, it depends if you've got time or not. So if you don't have the time and the effort, or you don't like painting, then you get him to paint some stuff for you. If you like painting and you've got the time, then you get him to show you how to paint the stuff yourself. Simples. Something for everyone.
Indeed it is, yes.
Absolutely.
Right, well, I will take Element Games. As we all know, Element Games are the go-to place for anything you need hobby-wise. Obviously, they've just done a big release of Dark Imperium, and my copy arrived bang on the Saturday morning. No fuss, no drama, as you would expect. Got a nice little suite in there. Obviously, got it at a lovely discount. And remember to click through the banner to, kick the show back and say that you're listening. So go to theimperialtruth.com, click the banner, go through to Element Games and place your orders for any pre-orders that might be coming up. What's the next in the GW line of pre-orders, Greg?
Who knows? Who knows?
Could be anything.
We know. Well, I'm pretty sure we're going to get some more Primarchs stuff and a Space Marine book out for 40k very soon, and we've got the General's Handbook 2 for Warhammer, so for Age of Sigmar. So who knows what's coming alongside that and anything else? I don't know, to be honest. But they must admit my copy came a couple of days later this time, because I know that they actually did a competition. So for every 100 boxes they sold, they're giving away a voucher, and they sold over 1,500 sets, I think, which is pretty good going. So obviously they can only be sent out on the Friday, and at which point there's a certain amount of time it takes to fill up vans and stuff. And for once, might say my copy was later than the Saturday, and a few other people got a bit disgruntled with that. I think that happened for more than one place that are big. That is one of the problems of being a popular store. So I haven't got an issue with that. At the end of the day, I was getting a price I was happy with from a company I'm happy with. I think they threw in some extra sweets and extra pens to try and, help that out. I can understand why it was frustrating for those who didn't get it, but this is an exceptional release. I don't think anyone quite saw how popular this edition of the game would be.
Yeah, I think there's been a massive surge, isn't there? Because you've got your 40k players that are going to buy it because it's the next version, and it had this big drawback, didn't it, of players that would probably hadn't played for quite some time. And I thought, I might get back into this. So I think it hit a lot of sales. Yeah,
a lot of Age of Sigmar players picked it up because they know the style of game it was going to be and the background with 40k. And I think quite a few Heresy players have moved over to it as well, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, I think. Oh, in fact, no, let's talk about it now. We've done our sponsors. So, yeah, seen a lot of chat on Facebook of people leaving the Heresy. Kind of to go over basically what we talked about last episode. We've just had announced the Horus Heresy rules book. Now, I haven't got a date on it, but it's coming very soon. I don't think we got a date on it. I haven't read the full article. I skim read it. And it's just to reiterate, nothing's really changing. They are getting rid of the rules that aren't relevant. So, some of those unique special rules, or universal special rules, like They Shall Know No Fear. It's not going to be in this book because it is not in this setting.
It's not a Heresy.
No, so little things like that. And what I've seen online is a real divide, particularly on Facebook, of and some of the forums of people who are like glad that it's staying 7th edition and those who are disappointed. What I haven't really seen, and this might just be where I'm looking, I appreciate that I've only gone to certain places, but I haven't really seen other gamers saying, oh, brilliant, I'll go and play that now. And that means that the community is fracturing a little bit, but without that new blood already, without that new blood to come in. Now, I'm pretty sure that there's going to be people here saying, oh yeah, my mate's doing it, or I'm doing it, or what have you. And yeah, there's no doubt there'll be a few, but I haven't seen it in anywhere in the numbers we've got who are talking about leaving the Heresy.
Yes, I saw quite a mixed bag on Facebook myself. I saw a lot of people saying that they were, until it changes over, I'm going to stop playing, all this sort of stuff. Some people saying, they're glad that it stayed the way it is, and that there were some people saying, well, do you know what, I like the old 40k, so I'm now going to go and play Heresy. But, I think the one thing it does limit is those crossover games, and it's a bit of a sad thing that obviously you've got that fracturing nature within the hobby.
Yeah, it is a tough one. It's the only situation they can do at the moment. I've seen people make absolute statements as well. Again, it's staying Heresy. It's staying 7th Ed for now. Just to reiterate that there is a chance that we'll move over. Now, people have said that it follows the money, and that's not always true. In the Leviathans, things like that are now being made available for 40k. So the more of the Heresy vehicles that have become available for 40k means that those vehicles are still going to sell because they're cool-looking vehicles. So how do you judge how many people are playing Heresy? Maybe you judge by ticket sales at events. Maybe you judge, to a certain point. Maybe you judge by kind of the online traffic, or maybe it's a case of how many of these new rules books are we selling. And if in a year, they've still got a pile of these rule books, then there's potentially an issue. Now, I say potentially because you can go out and buy an 7th edition 40k rule book for nothing at the moment. So, it's an interesting
things are going to be cheap, aren't they?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Templates are cheap, thankfully. If you can go and pick up loads of them as well if you want. It's a good time to go and get them. I see a few people using them as coasters at the moment. They're still in their dice bag. So yeah, it's interesting times, and so we'll have to rock it and roll it. There are still events going on. Certainly, it'll be interesting to see kind of ticket sales. But we're also at a point when there are more events than there have ever been, and they've been boosted. So at the moment, the tickets for First Blood have slowly started to sell, which is usually the case anyway. First week or two, they slowly build up. Bit of interest, but people are going to make sure they've got time off work, things like that. We've got 60 tickets put aside for that at the moment, but hopefully that will start to build up more and more. We'll start to get close to that 60, and then you get maybe people rushing because they think they might miss out on one, which is always fun. But we've got the event, the Blood and Glory event that I've set up. Is maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later on the show, but those tickets aren't quite out for sale yet. I have sent the pack off to Ben to get that all done. He hasn't done it yet, but I do know a small number of people have been asking where are those tickets, so that's good. But yeah, it's just that it was still in a very interesting phase. And there might be some people who try 8th and come back to 7th. You never know. Having played quite a few games now, I can see where I like the game and where I don't like it, and I think 40k 8th new edition is going to take quite a time to settle in. And if I was to go and play a tournament of it right now, I might not actually go because I can start to see some things already that would put me, if you met the wrong player, would put me off playing at my club with the players I'm playing. It's not a problem. But potentially, if winning becomes the attitude, which it would at a tournament, which is fair enough, you go to a tournament to win, then it might not be the game for me. So who knows? But there's plenty to be done there, and that will only happen.
I haven't played a game of the new version yet.
I mean, a lot of it is we've got generic rules. There are no army books out, or whatever they're going to call them, faction books or what have you. And, it's things like I've been using some Space Marines and they just die. They're really lackluster without the cool stuff. And it takes time. You can't say at the moment that this is ruling the game because not everyone's trying everything yet. It certainly looks like vehicles are pretty tough, but I'm sure that if you bring the army to deal with that, whilst having like plenty of wounds yourself, you're going to be all right. Anyway, that's 40k. That's new edition. We won't talk about that. You've got a little bit of news on the charity auction.
Yeah, so the charity auction for the Summoner completed on the Sunday, before we recorded this, and it managed to sell for £112, I think it was.
Excellent.
Which is not a bad amount, and fortunately, it sold to someone who is relatively local. When I say relatively local, like 40-minute drive away.
Okay, cool.
Which is for me, I was like, oh, thank God I haven't got to ship it to United States. Or
absolutely, yeah, it does make that life a little bit easier in that respect. That's excellent. So that will all get added on to the total we got to take it over £1,700.
Yes,
which is really good. I'm happy with that.
I'm very happy with that. I think we did rather well, Greg.
Yeah, we did all right, and we'll have to push on over the late summer and autumn. The other ones we're doing, we'll get our heads together on that one. Okay, at the weekend, so just the weekend of the 24th, 25th, I think it was, we had the Duchenne's phone-in podcast-a-thon thing, which was run by Radio Free Yes Fan guys, I think, were the first ones to do it. And this is the same charity as the House Night Raffle. And the idea was to do an old style, old school, like the TV kind of telethons, to do one of them on Google Hangouts, which other people could watch through the website. And over 8 hours, they had various podcasters and people on from around the world. So the Aussies and the Swedes, some of us Brits, Canadians and Americans. And I got up at 6 o'clock Sunday morning and looking, so happy to be alive. Joined in for the last couple of hours, which was good fun. I tend, through no kind of real desire, I tend to not have talked to a lot of those guys as much as a lot of the other guys have. I can be a bit of a loner in that respect, and it's nothing personal. It's just the way I am. So it was good to have some time chatting with those. I've talked to quite a few of them, but it's good to put some proper faces to names and voices as well, which is pretty cool. But it was getting a bit heated. There's some interesting discussion. It's not safe for work, I will say that. So don't go listening to it. But we'll try and I'll put the link up on the Facebook page and Twitter and everywhere else as well. So you can actually go and watch it all back if you want. Heaven knows what they got up to when I wasn't on there.
How many hours was it?
8. So just over an Eye of Horus podcast long episode. Yeah, I mean, you can obviously, it's segmented up. There's times when people come on and they swap people out and stuff as well. I think I'm on for the last hour and 50 minutes, something like that. I was desperately trying to get on, and computer was playing up, and then they were too full in the chat. So Kenny made way for me. But yeah, it was good, having some discussions. JP was getting his fluff debates or law debates on, and some good chuckles were had, which is all good. Yeah. So they raised $2,500. I don't know if that was the final total or what, but over that's what they said they raised. You'd have to double check the exact details with them. But there was a guy, oh my word, I'm going to try and remember his name. I just had to check, but his name is John Stanford. He matched the amount dollar to dollar. Wow. So it went from $2,505 to $5,010. And I think John's had some, I don't think it's Duchenne's, but I think he's had some illness in the family. I don't know the exact. I only caught up on little bits. But that's an amazing thing to do. So yeah, they did really well, the guys. And thanks to the guys at the Forgotten Legion, Radio Free Fan, for for organising that, because that was pretty cool.
Yeah, sounds it.
Yeah, it was good. It's something it's the kind of thing I'd like to do and would never get done. It takes different folks, different strokes, and that's the kind of thing I'm not that great at. But those guys are really good. So yeah. So have you been painting anything?
I've done a little bit. I've been working away, doing a little bit of Corax here and there. Just trying to get myself back into the swing of things again. I had a bit of a spell, and then I've stopped again. It very much hinged around the new 40k box set dropping.
Oh, right, okay.
I was doing quite well until that arrived on Saturday, and then I spent a good bit of time sitting there looking at the book, looking at the Marines, kit bashing a Marine, and
right.
it sort of distracted me a bit.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think it's fair to say that mine distracted me a bit. I'm back on it now because the date's looming for my project to be sorted, ready to go. I've got 3 Thalax left to paint, I think, so to build and paint, although one of them's missing a cable, so I'm going to have to go and order 3 Thalax just so I've got 3 ready to go. I'm going to have to try and source the cables from somewhere, but I can't find any second-hand ones.
Cables between the guns and...
yeah.
Got loads of them.
Yeah, so you've got loads of them.
Yeah.
Have you? Why?
Well, if you look at all of my Thalax, like my Golden Demon entries, you will notice they don't have any cables.
Different... Oh, just no cables?
No cables.
Oh, right, cool. In which case, we'll do a deal. Sorted. I'll double-check what I need so I can get them painting up. So that's 3 Thalax I need to do by, like, halfway through next month, so that should be fine. If anyone's been watching the Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, I put my Isle attacks up, which is pretty much finished.
Yes.
So that
the dude with the big rotor blades.
The big rotor blades, yeah. So that's a conversion Joe at the club did, and then decided he didn't want to play it, so I purchased it off of him and painted it up. I need to get some varnish now to run through the airbrush, I think. I don't know. Haven't decided yet exactly what varnish I'm going to use, but I can get quite greasy fingers, so it can rub that paint off quite easily. It's amazing how...
You're eating KFC, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing just how a little bit of, like, greasy, like, fingertips, how much it can rub off a model, the paint.
Oh, yeah. It's killer.
It is. It's amazing how small amount it is. So, yeah. So I really want to start getting all of my stuff, even the plastic stuff, varnished, because, I'm not worried about putting them into competition, so stuff all that. But that'd be really good. And then also, we managed to get some new shelving units in my front room, and the missus was like, well, I said, well, what about these 2 shelves? She said, well, why don't you put some models on there? And I'm like, okay, yeah. So I bought out all my knights, and I've suddenly realised how much painting I've got to do on the knights. So they might be the next thing, because I can get the airbrush out and do the big colours and get my Porphyrion finished then. And I'll have a knight army for 40k and for Heresy.
There you go.
Which will be beautiful, because, in Heresy it will be able to give particularly the tougher opponents some games. And then in 40k they're still good, but they're less imposing than they were as well. And it's a kind of 5-6 model army, whereas I'd need to paint off
the sheer fact that everything could shoot everything now.
Yes, everything can damage it. It's a little bit of a misleading kind of statement in that you will need like hundreds of las guns to do anything to a knight. They are tough. They take a lot of taking down, but they're not as binary as they were. So it does mean that if you've got nothing else to shoot, you might as well shoot them, because you might, I think I lost a wound to some bolt guns overwatching me last game I played. That was the first wound he lost. So it shows it can happen, which is really good. But to effectively take them down, you're still going to need big guns.
Yeah.
So, but it's not the level that it was. So I think knights will still be a tough army if you build them well. But they don't have to be, of course, because you don't have to build them that way. So
yes,
gives me some nice options. Just need a Porphyrion unit model rules for 40k. Want to bring the big boy out.
Oh, so weren't they covered in the...
No.
book?
Well, I haven't looked yet. I haven't had a chance to look at that. I picked up the normal book. I had a quick flick through the others, but I haven't actually sat down with them properly. So it might be in there, but I could be wrong. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm also looking forward to, as I said, the new 40k book from Forge World, because all my Mechanicum, or most of my Mechanicum, will be able to be used as well. So that will give me lots of options and keep me happy, and I've got less pressure to paint things as well, which would be nice.
That was always nice.
Yes. Excellent stuff. Right, in which case, I think we'll leave that there. We'll go away and we'll come back with our top 5 Primarchs. Well, in this week's how-to section, we're going right back to basics. And do you want to tell us what we're going to be talking about now?
We're going to talk about glue and glues and how to stick things.
Yeah, it almost sounds too simple, doesn't it?
It almost does, but the funny thing is, there's a lot of different thoughts on the subject, on what types of glue people use and methods and etc. etc. So, what's your go-to glue, Greg?
Are we talking about plastic or resin?
Well, see, there's a hidden question there, because obviously I am a super glue man, and I use super glue for both plastic and resin.
Why do you use it for plastic?
I like the versatility of being able to snap something off.
Sure.
And so, like, I'll often put a model together and think, do you know what, I want to put this together to see how it looks, but then I'm going to want to paint it and snap its arms off, or snap the legs off, or do something to it so I can paint it easier. So I know I can do that with super glue, whereas plastic glue is fantastic, but it's almost like, well, you've glued it now.
Yeah.
That's your lot.
So this is my argument for other podcasters, various game systems will say, why are you using plastic glue on plastic? Use super glue all the time. But unless you're going to be breaking that model apart, then plastic creates a better bond for plastic glue. So I very rarely put a model together and thinking I might want to break this apart, because I don't, obviously you're talking about commission pieces here, so you're talking about high-end composition as well.
Yes, yeah, exactly that.
So
I want to see how it looks all put together to make sure I've got everything in the right place, I've got the right weapon choices.
Yeah.
But I don't want to paint it in that pose.
No. I think I've wanted to break apart about 8 plastic models ever. If you really are that concerned about weapon options is always one. Like, I want to put these plastic, melter gun guys together, but, in the future maybe they want to be plasma. Well, magnetize the gun. All right, that's a more sensible option for me. So I do use, poly cement for plastics. It just means if they drop on the floor, there's that slightly less chance of the, that clean break that super glue can give you.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big things, isn't it? I mean, your poly cement, your plastic glue is going to be super duper strong.
Yeah, because
you're not going to get any real problems there.
Yeah, so teaching people to suck eggs for people that know, but polymer cement actually melts the plastic together, so it creates it doesn't form a clean bond between the two bits. It actually molds them into one bond. So that's generally what I do. When it comes to resin, in the UK, I buy Loctite, and I've just bought some Gorilla Glue as well. And the Gorilla Glue is really thick, so that's for the bigger pieces. That's for like vehicles, things like that, or putting something onto a base, that kind of stuff. But I make sure, personally, that I buy with a brush applicator.
Okay, yes, yeah.
So you've got, particularly the Gorilla Glue, actually can be, so the brush is the kind of, the hole of the lid is the brush, but the brush is actually hollow. So if you take the top part of the lid off, you can actually apply it like pour it on as well,
That's quite
which
handy.
is really good. And I just got that on my Amazon.
I've never used Gorilla Glue, and I know a lot of people that have. And I've always bought a lot of GW super glues, and I think they are designed to be a lesser bond. I do honestly think they're designed if you need to stick your fingers to something.
Well, yeah, it's
you're
a
not going to need to go
safety
to A&E to get them apart.
They're selling glues to families who are going to use them for 12-year-old kids. The other thing with them is the price. I mean, they do different types. So you've got the different types of glue now, but actually that Gorilla Glue is really thick. The Loctite isn't. So I've got kind of different consistencies, and I haven't really stress tested it yet, but I think if I was going to put together a big vehicle or a Knight or a Titan, I'd be looking at something like that if I wasn't going to go the whole hog and use a Araldite or a 2-part epoxy.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's another good one to mention, really, isn't it? The old 2-part epoxy, because I find that has its own niches as well. If I've got something that I know I need that super strong bond for, almost like a rubbery bond, I'll reach for the Araldite and mix that up. But you do get some issues with that, like with the smell. I mean, it doesn't sting. And I even had I was talking to someone about gluing some stuff down the other week, and I mentioned, I'm going to get my Araldite out. He went, oh yeah, I know you've got your Araldite out. I can smell it. It just doesn't go away. Once it's on that model, it does it lingers.
Sure. I mean, that could, I suppose that could be solved if you varnish afterwards. That would hold that
more
in.
than likely. Yeah.
So that's always an option. Do you ever use an accelerator?
Yes, I do actually. I've got some, but I've had some bad experiences because I had a friend that used to use it all the time.
Yeah.
And I found it when he was showing me how he did it, I was like, "Wow, that's brilliant!" You can put glue on, bit of accelerator, bang. You get sticking stuff and repairing stuff really quickly. And then it was only when I was trying to, I painted up one of my Ford World Red Claw drop pods, I think it was. I'd airbrushed everything on, and then this one part of the fin broke off. And I thought, do you know what? I'll accelerate this, and I sprayed the accelerator on. And then just watched all the paint sort of slough off the side of the model. I went, oh. So after that point, I haven't really gone too heavily into accelerator because obviously it does damage the paintwork. And I have used it on the odd time where I'm trying to stick something resin together a bit quick and I want to maybe get some undercoat on, but I haven't really used it that intensively.
Yeah, the people I saw use it the most were they were commission painters. So it's all about how quickly you can get things done. The one thing it does, it dries quick, but it dries more brittle. So it may be a little bit more susceptible. Now that, it was years ago, maybe there's different products on the line, but that was always what I was led to believe. And I generally, back when we had to use metal, like something like that would be a godsend. Because, you'd spend so long trying to hold your Dreadnought arm onto the Dreadnought that you stuck your finger to the arm, and the only time it ever glued into the model, it would glue to your finger, and in trying to get your finger off the model, you'd pull the arm out as well. Now,
there was always problems.
with resin and plastic, that issue is so much lessened. It might be that you're doing a fire rapt or something, which is notoriously difficult, where you need to actually apply pressure to pieces. In most cases, people try and use rubber bands or what have you for that. But every now and then with the model, you do have to just apply a bit of pressure. So there is still a chance of sticking to a model, but it's much less than it was, which is good.
And I think that's a fair point there, because I think when I have stuck vehicles together, I think I've used accelerator more than anything else.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes you're trying to sometimes glue a bigger area, a bigger bond area, and that's when you want things to set quickly rather than sat there trying to hold a piece for like 2 minutes just to see if it sticks.
Sure. And we actually mentioned we got PVA as well.
Yes, of course, yeah. So obviously, these are just glues we're talking about for resin and plastic. But obviously, for your bases, if you want to get some sand on there, they have that PVA is probably the go-to glue that probably nearly everyone's got in a drawer somewhere, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's cheap. It's useful. It's a decent glue as well. I think we in the UK particularly, we tend to think of it, as primary school glue because it's fairly safe and everything else. But it works to a point.
It's funny because I used to use it obviously religiously for gluing sand down to bases and bits and pieces. However, have you ever had to do the old snow, where you're mixing in snow effect stuff with PVA and water and applying it to a base?
I couldn't be bothered, but I know the system, yeah.
Yeah, so, that's obviously quite a well-known sort of way of applying snow to bases. And I always used to have a problem with yellowing of the sort of the snow once it had dried.
Yeah,
I never eat yellow snow. And I found that one of my friends, he actually was using wood glue. And the wood glue didn't dry yellow at all.
Oh, okay.
It was completely clear. And obviously it's not PVA, it's some sort of different formula. I'm sure there's a chemist out there that could tell us the exact difference between wood glue and PVA. But it dried clear and the snow looked a lot better. So when I started doing lots of snow bases for my iron hands, I started using wood glue.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
there's little things like that as well. If you're doing a load of snow bases.
Yeah, I can't imagine they're a hugely different product. There's obviously some difference there.
Yes,
but it kind of feels the same and everything else, which is quite good. So yeah, there are a number of different options, and we've already talked about some of the positives and negatives for those. When building? So I try and use brush on glue wherever possible because I can be a bit ham-fisted when I'm squeezing a tube. I also don't like the ones. First off, I tend to end up clogging up the end and then not being able to get lids off and wasting half a glue pot.
Yes.
Which is
tons of glue that's sort of gone all manky inside a glue pot.
Yeah, which is why when GW went to the smaller tubes, I think that was a good idea actually. Buying one's kind of size of glue, but in 3 smaller packages means that's going to happen less. I used to buy who was it now? The model kit ones, the blue thing with the metal kind of applicator.
I want to say Revel, but I'm thinking of the chocolate.
No, I think it is Revel actually, it's something like that. Anyway, and that would have the same problem, that metal tube. The advantage of a metal tube is if you're careful, you can heat it up. And that will melt the glue and will release it, which I didn't kind of think about. I don't smoke, haven't got any lighters on me anyway.
Actually, I used to have, because you used to have the little thin metal tube in some of the old GW plastic ones, didn't you? In the plastic, and I remember people getting lighters out and sort of heating those up to clear blockages and things. Yeah,
and the good thing about that is you've got a long application there. So if you've actually got a join where there's a little bit of a gap, like in a ball and socket joint, sometimes there's a little bit, you can get it in there and pour some extra glue in if it's not quite holding. So that has an advantage in that. It's tricky to do that with, a thick applicator or a brush.
Yes.
Particularly if you're mending a model, which is already painted.
Yeah. I think the brush applicator, especially on the old GW one they used to make that you just fell over every 2 seconds every time you looked at it.
Yeah.
That one with the brush I always found really useful, but obviously they don't make that version anymore. Also, when I was watching a Darren Latham sort of how-to hobby pod at one of the Warhammer Fests, he recommended applying your super glue to sort of like a piece of card or palette or whatever you've got, and then using toothpicks to applicate the glue to the model.
Yeah.
So you're not squeezing anything directly on there because, like you said, the control element you lose.
You get blotches of super glue everywhere.
Yeah.
And you have to wait for that to dry and everything else. Yeah, absolutely. It's the same principle, isn't it? I'm, obviously, Darren's working to a higher level of modelling and everything than I am. I find that the problem with the toothpick method is like the wood can soak up some of it to start with, and then I'm always like, by the time I've squirted some out onto a thing, that starts to dry too quickly, and then I end up sticking the toothpick down somewhere because it's got glue on it. So at least
on the end of your elbow or somewhere silly.
Yeah, so I use Humbrol polycement with a brush applicator, which you pick up from model shops anywhere that sells like Airfix, stuff like that. And then I'll wipe the excess off the inside of the glass bottle, And I'll do the same with I do the same with the Loctite, because again it's a plastic bottle, it's designed to hold it, and the same with the Gorilla. So the Gorilla comes out there very thick, so you have to wipe quite a lot of it off. But that's what I do, and then I apply from there. There have been a couple of times where I have used, when it is a really awkward little join and I need to get something in there, I have used toothpicks, and actually went and bought a load, partly for that reason, and partly to create little holders for my corks for little bits. But yeah, it's a good tool to have just in case.
It's funny little tips like that can actually make things a lot easier, and I think that's often what these segments are there to do.
Yeah, I say, the chances are a lot of this is already kind of known to people, but these how-to ones, sometimes we're going to go back and look at the real basics. So having talked about that, have you got any, right, so advice for actually gluing models? So again, it's not as difficult as it used to be with, like, the design process for models is a lot better now. So the contact points are pointed out on quite a lot of the instructions you get, and we're not dealing with metal, so we're not dealing with huge weighty bits, to glue to each other. But there are still, challenges, particularly with resin. Got any kind of tips, interesting things to go with?
I thought it was quite interesting what you said just then, because obviously I remember back in the day, you've got a very oddly shaped pieces that sort of had to be glued together, and you were all looking for the contact point. But now you get a lot more sort of sockets, don't you? Yeah. With bits in, and it does, like you said, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to find those contact points. I think the key thing is I do a lot of dry fitting to make sure I've got everything spot on before I apply the glue. Often I will use some sort of putty, or I don't generally use blue tack, but that would probably suffice as well, just to make sure I've got everything where I need it to be.
Sure.
And often I'll use that as a temporary bond as well. So I know you're not meant to. I know a lot of people, they say, oh, you shouldn't use green stuff as a adhesive.
Yeah.
But I do use that quite regularly, mix a little bit of that up, push the pieces together, okay, it takes a little while to go off, but actually then for me, I know it's safe to remove it when I want to break a bit off, but also it's not a bad bond for certain awkward bits. Like heads sometimes in armour and in sockets can be a little bit awkward to get them exactly where you want them. Push a bit of green stuff in there and you've got that manoeuvrability, and then you just let it cure exactly where you want that head to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I find that quite handy as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Sometimes, particularly heads that are like reset into sockets, into kind of like cowls and things like that. The one thing I haven't got on the table is a good pair of like very fine kind of either tweezers or something like that to actually get in and hold them without my pudgy fingers, getting in the way.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I end up just moving it with a knife a little bit. You haven't got the control then. So yeah, that's definitely something. And that's where sometimes actually, if you're putting together a plastic model and you've got to slot a piece in like that, and then you kind of maybe maneuver it a little bit, that might be a good time to use super glue rather than the plastic glue.
Yeah.
Depending on kind of the conditions you've got, you might find you've got a little bit more time to work it, depending on how much super glue you put in as well. But plastic, if you get it slightly wrong and leave it a little bit, it will start to break down those plastics.
Yes.
And change that kind of format up. So that's something you can definitely look at.
And I think something that I think we spoke about once or twice before, when I had this glass issue with my model, my special broken glass effect stuff that I put all over the bases of some models. Obviously, I was advised to use silicone to bond that down, and that worked a treat. And I'm tempted to play around with using like certain like silicone. Again, it maybe had that sort of putty sort of feel to it, where you can put it in. It's sticky enough that you can position it enough where you want it, and just let it then set and cure.
Right. So we're talking
where
about
it sits.
Similar stuff to bathroom tiling, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like silicone sealant. That's exactly what I bought. Just some clear silicone sealant to apply to the base of the model. the glass was.
I suppose as well, if your join is, say, not particularly well lined up, things like that, it could also act as a bit of a filler.
Yeah, definitely.
In those bits as well, which is also something to think about. Because, if you've got a plastic tank and it's not quite... The amount of times I've had to build things that where two halves have gone together, and you kind of build it, put it together, and then I brush down the join with the glue after it, and then give it another good squeeze. And that helps, make that stronger all the way down, obviously, but also helps smooth off the top join, because it again melds those plastics together. But yeah, you can have those gaps in other products where you can't obviously do that. So yeah, that could work quite well. I do remember some of the old. You talked about the design of the. We get even other companies, even not that long ago, you'll get two flat pieces to glue together. GW tends not to do that now. Unless it's arms. But even them now,
even I'd say even their arms, they're getting
more and more. We're getting a socket, either a ball and socket or a very slightly raised triangle or square or something that can fit in, depending on how restricted. Because the problem with those is, unless it's a circle, and even if it's a circle, it can restrict the posability. So it doesn't happen all the time, but we are getting more ball and sockets, which are better than the old flat shoulder to arm join.
Yes.
I remember Dan building one of my old, it might have been the Macarius, something like that, and the resin with, again, two huge bits of flat resin and everything else, and just scoring up both sides to create a little bit of something to grip hold of, which is not something that is, as soon as he did it, it was like, of course, that makes sense.
I remember doing that back in the day when I was trying to get metal, good bonds on metal models, like you said, like dreadnoughts and bits. And do you remember the old metal land speeder?
Yeah.
That thing was horrendous.
There's been plenty of horrendous models. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've got anything with a good flat edge. Get your knife out and just put some cross hatching into it. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, but anything that allows the glue to sit in somewhere and grab hold of something is going to help strengthen that bond a little bit more as well. Yeah,
completely.
Which is really good. Any other little problems you come across gluing?
I suppose one of the big ones that some people may find is the old, the misting and the ghosting that you get from superglue.
Right, yep.
And I think we discussed, was it in the past, about olive oil? Was it putting olive oil?
That was for Tester's dull coat, particularly. That was for varnishing. Varnishing, you can olive oil out. I don't know about glue, whether that works or not. It could do. I haven't had to look that up. It's not something that's become...
I'm sure there are some things... I've heard some people say olive oil in the past, so maybe I'm picking it up from that. But again, that can be an issue. So that's, again, another time to think about what type of glue you're using for what purpose. And that can often... I find that's usually where you've got a super glue bond and it's not sat completely tight, the two areas against each other. And if you've got that little puddle of super glue in there and it's not firmly against another surface, you will get that sort of horrible white mist come out from the super glue.
And that will only really affect if you're gluing painted pieces together.
Yes,
that's something to remember. If you're building your models before you paint them, completely building them, that's not an issue. But if you're creating part assemblies or whatever, then that is something to be aware of, for sure. Yes. It's quite interesting as well because we talked a little bit about accelerants and the time it takes to moving around models when you're using them. Some people aren't aware simply of how superglue sets. So it needs moisture helps superglue set quicker.
Yes.
So, and again, I remember being in the hobby for years before I found, what are you licking your models, Because if you lick one contact or lick your finger, run it down a contact point, a little bit of water, and then glue the other side, it will help set that off that little bit quicker, which means you've got less chance of you moving and all that jazz.
Yes, I remember dipping models in a bit of paint water.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've done pretty much every kind of different type. Remember, if something's struggling to glue, and you maybe got to re-glue it, if you lick at either of those contact points, it's going to have super glue on it. It's very easy to forget that.
Safety warning, kids.
Well, it's just not nice. That's the problem. So yeah, a little bit of just a little dab of water into that will help super glue set. So that's always just a little handy thing. Again, a lot of the time you don't need it, but the bigger pieces, particularly the heavier pieces, all the spindly bits where you don't really want to touch, because with resin particularly, you might be getting, your little kind of, aerials snapping or whatever, or you're trying to glue, a small hand onto a piece or something like that.
Yeah.
Or weapons flipping cables. They're fun. So, there's plenty of those little bits and pieces. Plastic glue needs no real special kind of thing to it.
No, I mean, there's something else that I wanted to ask you. I know this is something I've heard. I don't know if you've heard the same thing. If you've got a super glue bond and you want to get rid of it, and maybe you've gone a bit over the top of the super glue, have you heard about freezing the model?
Yep.
To eradicate the bond, or to weaken the bond, so that when you go to snap it, it just snaps cleanly off. Yep,
super glue will be affected by freezing the model. Just be careful putting your resin models. You don't want to pick it out when it's completely frozen and drop it. I can't see that doing much good to your model. So yeah, but it will certainly weaken the bond. Again, I think having never done it, I would be wary if that's a really huge bond on relying on that. I had an issue with one of my knights a while ago, Mr. Rudgy, thank you, and had to get some super glue debonder. They do make the stuff and it does work to a point. Again, if you've got a huge arm joint on a Titan, I can't see that it's going. I don't know how much of the stuff you'd need to even touch it to make it. But anything that helps make it weaker will allow you to get in there, remove the piece without damaging anything, and then clean it out and start again.
Yeah, I had that with I think I've told the story of my old Thunderhawk, the old metal one.
Yeah.
And where I stuck the engine pod on wonky, and then
it's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, I used so much copious amounts of super glue, and it was like absolute rock, this stuff. And again, I soaked it in that anti-super glue killer, and eventually it came apart. But it was hard going. That old Thunderhawk could take some pounding as well. I was hitting that thing with a hammer, and it wouldn't break.
Yeah, I mean, I purchased my Thunderbolt fighter off a mate. God, this must be 15 years ago. Just after I worked for the company, probably, and he'd glued an engine in, put it down to dry, and shifted it accidentally. So it was like a quarter of an inch out of place, and it was just starting to bug me. And I ended up actually hacking the resin away.
Which to try and get to
it took a whole Thursday game night of hacking the resin away to a point where I could break it off and then kind of bodge it into place. It got there in the end. Not ideal, but yeah. And I suppose there aren't. I don't think there's a huge amount you can do. You're looking at freezing, debonding, and kind of manipulation, should we say? Depending on where on the model that piece is you want to get rid of. But the simplest things are to get it right the first time, which is no help when you've made a mistake. But, as you say, dry fit, double check what you're doing before you're gluing. The amount of times I've heard people kind of go, oh, I've ended up gluing the wrong bit into the wrong bit on the instructions because they weren't paying attention, and sometimes they can be rectified, sometimes they can't. But
and if not, it was a deliberate mistake.
Yeah, joy. Yeah, there's nothing worse than kind of you buy a cool new model and then you muck it up. I mean, say like my Knight Porphyrion, the bless Joe, he didn't quite pay full attention to the struts on the ankle, so I've got to do some bodging to make sure the armour plates fit in right. But that's not a major issue. I don't think I can get in there with a knife and just make some adjustments. But, so it is what it is.
Well, I was reading an article on the Tinterwebs about it was an article about Games Workshop shares, because I've got a few of those and they've gone up massively in price, so I've made quite a few quid. And I was reading an article and it was describing about Games Workshop and the things it does and why it has such a loyal hobby following. And one of their things was, and it's well known that that people will buy sets of Games Workshop models, make one mistake of them and throw them away and buy a whole new set. And I was like, that person really doesn't understand the hobby.
I've seen it happen. But yeah, no, you're right. That's that's a whole different thing. Kind of people talking about GW shares. There's some interesting characters doing that. But yeah, I mean, there are some things you can do. And remember out there as well, if you've made a mistake, if something's wrong or you're unsure about something, you've got all the Facebook groups now, you've got all the Twitter groups, you've got you got podcasters, you've got YouTubers, you've got all these other people, bloggers creating content, and people who are engaged in the hobby. And if you put a question up, generally they'll get answered in a pretty sensible way. So if you're like, oh, I'm sure this piece doesn't quite work right, am I doing something wrong? Before you go, well, I'll try it, glue it in.
Let me just give this a go.
Yeah, and then find out, actually, no, you've misread this bit, this is this and this. You know, it's simply done. A couple of my Thalax models, they don't look great because the position is wrong, because I misjudged how the hip joint goes with the model. I mean, they're fine. They do okay, but they're not the best posed models ever. Yeah,
you know, they're probably one of the biggest advocates for dry fitting.
Yeah, and my Thanatar with the legs slightly raised above the floor.
They're so easy to get wrong. So easy.
Very much so. But yeah, I think we've covered everything to do with glue.
Hopefully so.
I can think of.
Maybe it was
any
useful for someone.
Yeah, any super tips that you can teach us, then we'll be more than happy to take them on board.
Yeah, that's
awesome. We'll cut to a musical break and come back with our top fives. Now, we chose to do this top five partly because we were running out of time. You know, sometimes life gets in the way of organising the show, and it was like, oh, shoot, we forgot to organise that thing, so we'll have to replace it. And the top fives are, you know, we hadn't done one in a while. So we chose to do the Primarchs.
You did?
Now, there's only 18 to choose from. And yes, Neil's list might be shorter than that for reasons.
Yes.
But I thought, yeah, why not? You know, where we are in the Heresy, let's have a look at the Primarchs. And again, these are going to be judged on whatever reasons we want to give. I think it's fair to say, Neil, that yours are judged for mainly one reason.
One reason only.
And no prizes for anyone guessing that.
It may be related to painting.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure no one's going to be surprised with a couple of mine. But, you know, whatever. But a couple might be a little bit of a surprise. I might have to open this out to a couple of other people who've contributed to the show, actually. So, for another episode. But we can go through now what we think. So, let's start at number 5. You do yours. Who's your number 5?
My number 5 is Ferrus Manus.
Number 5, your Primarch.
My Primarch. So, that bit, obviously, I was a massive Iron Hands player. Still got my army, obviously. And when I painted my Ferrus Manus for Golden Demon, that was my first demon. Well, it was my second demon, and it was like the first one after a very long time. So it held a special place for me. I still really love the model. I'm not too keen on the paint job that I did on that model, and you know, I've never known, one day I might revisit it. But I think it's a great model. It looks great. I was never very keen on it when it first came out, and since then I've actually grown to like it a hell of a lot more. But then once I finished painting it,
still my favourite Primarch.
Yeah, you always say your favourite Primarch model.
I still think it's the best model in overall look.
Is that pose? Is that
everything? Everything. The head, the pose, the dynamism. Just that whole model is stunning. It stands out. It tells a story within itself, and they all do to a certain extent. I just think that one has it has nothing that I don't like about it, for starters, whereas some of the others might do, niggling things. I just think the face is fantastic.
Yeah.
And then the hands, and I say the pose helps so much. There's no doubt what's going on with him there. I think it's brilliant. But yeah, okay, so Neil's picked Ferrus Manners, and that's all on his painting. All good. Okay. Mine's the Khan, number 5. Now, until Chris Rake got his hands on the White Scars, the amount I knew about the Khan was basically he was at Terra, he rides around really fast, and they're slightly kind of based on the Mongols. And then Chris's books came out, Brotherhood of the Storm, and then Scars and Path of Heaven, and he kind of broke all that down into a much deeper story, and we've got this guy who knows what people think of him and doesn't care, who the only thing he cares about is people kind of say, oh, you're just like the Space Wolves. And he's like, no, no, got it all wrong. Who has a brilliant kind of view on loyalty, and that goes down to his whole Legion as well, the way he looks at that. And I don't want to get too deep into that because there's huge spoilers in that. But when people make the wrong choice in the Legion, kind of he respects it to a point. He's like, okay, I see what you've done, and they don't necessarily back down just because they made the wrong choice if they've kind of sworn to it. Like their honour is a huge part of what they are. Even if it hurts them to maintain their honour, they will maintain their honour. So that's a really cool aspect. And then the whole aspect of the White Scars, like they are so out there, wild, free, that it's hard for the Imperium to restock them, because it's just the way they work. And no one knows where Jagatai is. It's like, where is he? Don't know. He's where he needs to be. It's
I must when I have listened to the couple of the White Scar novels, and they are portrayed in a particularly good manner, and I was quite surprised because when before I'd listened to the stories, I really didn't like the White Scars. Like there was nothing about them that really I liked at all. And then after listening to the stories, you really sort of you had a lot of respect for them. I thought they were a really cool Legion.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And and as with all the Legions, a lot of that comes from the Primarch and his philosophy, his writing Brotherhood of the Storm. Horus comes to him and says, look, he hears of it, and Horus, kind of expects him to just come with him. But even then, he's like, no, I want to find out what's going on. Even when other people, like Russ, is like, awesome, you're going to come and help. He's like, no, I've got to find out the truth for myself. It's really cool. Love the Khan. There we go. So your number 4.
My number 4 is Vulcan, the peace-loving hippie of the Primarchs.
Something like that.
Yeah. So again, model, I'm going purely on painting. I haven't painted a Vulcan. I really love the model. I love the pose. I'm just looking through my list actually and trying to work out I'm checking all of my Primarchs aren't all Sam Egan sculpts. That's good. That means I haven't just gone very down one road.
Most of them are.
Most of them are. But then again, most of the Primarchs are Sam.
Exactly.
So, but fair enough. And yeah, again, love the pose. For me, I notice a lot of similarities on the Primarchs when I look at them. And obviously, especially if you look at the feet, if you look at the feet of the Primarch, you'll see the same sort of shoe that he's put on most of the Primarchs. Vulcan's armor though has got a lot of nice touches on it, but it also adds a lot of plate area for painters to do nice things with, blending wise and things like that. So for me, I do think Vulcan's going to be a really, really nice model to paint. So he is my number 4.
Not intimidated by the skin tone?
That is one of the things that worries me the most about salamanders, because it's not even a sort of skin tone, the classic black skin that you could paint and bring all those nice earthy colours into, because it's meant to be jet black, isn't it? Jet black with red eyes.
It's an unnatural skin tone.
Yes. Which is then very, very hard to paint and portray, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine that it's easy to go over the top with it.
Yes, very, very easy.
Yeah, I mean, they're all fantastic models, but yeah, Vulcan's pretty awesome. And he was a choice. He certainly was a choice for me. He just missed out on mine. Little spoiler for what's coming up. He won't be there.
I like his sort of walking through that wall pose as well. You know, that sort of where he's sort of smashed through the wall and he's sort of stepping through.
Yeah.
I thought that's a very nice touch on it.
I kind of like the arc he's been given in the stories as well, without giving anything away. I like it without being massively a huge fan of it, if you know what I mean. He's very different. Vulcan Lives was a cracking read for me to discover this very different being. And it'll be interesting to follow that through his story. Really cool. Okay, so my number 4 is Alfarius, just for the model.
Purely for the model. Every Space Marine model that's made.
Yeah, the old classics. Every Primaris model that's made now will be Alfarius. Have
a lot of people been saying that? Someone mentioned
lots of people are talking about taking the Primaris as a base for Alfarius and maybe a couple of squads to represent the bigger dudes. Yeah, cool. If it's done well, I'm sure it'll look amazing. Yeah, I would be able to do that. So, why Alfarius? Intriguing. I think the Alpha Legion, the Black Library authors kind of admit that the Alpha Legion got a bit too good at what they do, or they relied too much on the same tricks when portraying them. That kind of was addressed in Praetorian of Dawn, where they didn't stop trying those tricks, but, stuff happens. They're so cocksure in what they do. They think they know so much about what's going on because of the events of the Cabal and everything else. These are the guys who, in theory, joined the Heresy to stop Chaos winning by allowing Chaos to win in the short term, losing in the long term.
Yes.
And that's cool. And then the whole thing with his brother as well is pretty cool. Major reason I chose him was because for his rules. I mean...
Oh, really?
Yeah. Joe borrowed Luke's Alpha Legions for London Heresy. And he was like, right, I don't think he used them before he got there. Maybe he had one game with them. He said, so kind of what do I have to remember? And I was like, well, Alfarius basically hasn't got Crusader and hasn't got something else, but he's got every single other unique special rule there is. It's just, it's easier to tell your opponent what they don't have. And then the buff, the buffs he gives his army, the fact he can be hidden in the army. He's no slouch either. I mean, he's not going to stand up to the big fellas, but he's not a slouch. He just kind of, he more than almost any other Primarch really changes your army. So when Luke brought them to Attack and Reaver, I think people are like, Alpha Legion, Alpha. And I think Luke, to be fair, was like, Alpha Legion are only okay, and they do this and this, and then all of a sudden it was like, boom, and here come the extra rules for having Alfarius in, and suddenly, this unit have got a lot better, this unit have got a lot better, this unit, and all of a sudden it was destroying stuff, and I think he may have won 4 out of 5 games or something like that. He did pretty well. And Alfarius, Alpha Legion aren't a bad force to take anyway. None of them are, but you know what I mean. they're not at the bottom of the pile when it comes to special rules. And then Alfaris on top of it really helps boost that. You know, they have their weaknesses, but he can do a lot of stuff. It's very cool. You know, at some point we'll get the model as well, so we can enjoy that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing for my list. There's a lot of models I wasn't even entertaining because there's obviously they haven't released a model for yet, and I can't wait to see what they do with Alfaris. I think it's going to be quite exciting. I think it's going to be
I think it could be quite a challenge.
Yes, yeah, I think for them, I remember there was some discussions, wasn't there, at the Heresy Weekender, like, how are you going to portray him? How are you going to make him look? And I think, was it Mark Bedford was saying that they might go down the route of, although he looks like a normal Space Marine to everyone that looks at him, that is more of like maybe a bit like how Korax can sort of ghost walk, and he can portray this image of him being a normal spaceman, but actually he's far from it, and his armor is a bit more ornate, and he is a lot bigger, and all these sort of things.
Oh yeah, I mean, he still has ornate armor. You know, he still goes to see Horus wearing some shinier armor and things like that. It doesn't have to do that all the time. At times, he wants to appear as the Primarch, or have someone appear as a Primarch for him. You know, and at those points, you kind of need to stand out a little bit. So there's absolutely no reason why you can't do that. Remember, the best lies are told amongst truths. You know, the Alpha Legion are information gatherers first and foremost. Now, how they control that information, it doesn't mean everything they tell you is a secret or a lie. Otherwise, no one would ever believe the Legion.
Yeah, if everything was a lie, they'd never.
Yeah, and on the tabletop, as you say, it's highly stylized. So you want him to stand. You'd be disappointed if he didn't look as cool as the other Primarchs. It's as simple as that.
Oh yes, yes.
So yeah, awesome. Do you want to move on to your number 3?
Okay, so my number 3 is going to be Horus, the big man himself. I've always loved this model from when we first saw it, when it was, first sort of previewed. I think the pose is amazing. I think the base where he's standing on the eagle head is just absolutely genius. It's such a it's one model that I haven't painted yet that I would, I'd drop everything to paint. I think if someone said, like, say if our good friend Jeff O'Hara turned around and said, you know what, I don't fancy Korax anymore, do you fancy painting Horus? I would be like, yeah, no problem. Just just chuck it to one side and start again, because it is a fantastic model.
Yeah, the base on that really aids that model as well.
Oh, massive.
Yeah, it's kind of the regal setting for him in all his misguided glory. Yeah, it's cracking. And
he looks exactly how you want him to look, doesn't he, really? Sort of standing on top of a nice sort of imperial ruin, sort of just commanding the area.
Yeah, it's a very imposing model. You got, where we've talked about Vulcan and Ferris, they're not imposing. I mean, Vulcan a little bit, but Ferris isn't imposing. Ferris is you still kind of, you feel the piece is like there's power, there's strength there. But they managed to capture it with Horus without him being, like, you wouldn't argue with him, and yet he's not doing anything that threatening.
Yes. No, yeah, completely.
Which is really cool, which is so suitable for the War Master. I think it really works well. And I think in a weird way, for me, Guilliman does that quite well as well. And I know a lot of people don't like that, but I'm like, this is a guy who has more to him than just being able to smash your face in. There's a bigger scope of things going on there. It's certainly a leader.
Oh yes, definitely. I think it's one of the best Primarch faces that Sam Egan sculpted as well.
Yeah, it's quite cool. It's quite good old Yulbrynner look to him.
Yes.
Which is always good. Yeah, no, I like it. I keep seeing people's now the world breakers, the mace, isn't it? Yeah, keep seeing that break off. And I'm always like, oh, that's harsh.
You're talking about bad bits for breaking off. I think Kurz has got to be
a lot of fiddly little
those
bits.
claws are so delicate.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. So my number 3. Now this might shock people. Actually, Rogel Dawn. So I don't really like Rogel Dawn. I think most people are aware of that. The character himself, the way he's come across in the books, his reaction to Garrow, the way of dealing with all those kind of things, the whining, the interactions with Sigismund, all that stuff. But yet, he needs to be that character, and he's there, almost there as this guy I love to hate, who has to be as, kind of solid and stoic, but like the job's worth of what he needs to do, and he struggles with it as well, which is quite cool. Because he's there on Terra, he's having to miss out on everything that's going on. He's there on Terra because he is that guy who, when the Emperor says don't come in this door for any reason, won't go in that door for any reason.
Yes, yeah, he does. He is the way he is because he knows he's the only one that can be.
Yeah, and that all comes about because of the style of character he is, which actually makes him not a particularly nice chap a lot of the time, but you can almost respect him for it. And then John wrote Praetorian of Dawn and just kind of gave us a little bit more insight into his character. And if you heard, the interview with John and Aaron, saying that can Dawn even kind of change what he is? I think he could a little bit, not a huge amount maybe, but that's the way he wants to view his world as well. There are rules and they must be abided by. And he does kind of one of the jobs that needs doing in the Heresy. No one else wanted to sit on Terra. I mean, he didn't want to sit on Terra. So you can't blame the fella.
No.
And post Heresy as well. I mean, he takes it hard. He's quite, also forget sometimes just quite how fiery he can be. We saw that with Kurz. And I say, when talking about splitting up the legions and everything else post Heresy, he's kind of cool, but when he's bawling out Sigismund in the way he does, and you're just like, wow, he really can't bend. At Thal, when he calls the troops back, and they're like, yep, okay, we've got a chance here of kind of taking Perturabo out of the fight, but we've been given an order. We follow orders. There's absolutely no leeway in this guy at all. And that's part of the reason why he reacts so badly to Garrow, because he doesn't bend. He has a world which he struggles to handle those changes like that. But once he's kind of set up for the war, then it's kind of cool. Once he knows what's going on, he can then adapt within that setting. So yeah, I've actually gone for Dawn. This seems a bit wrong.
Yeah, you do moan about him a bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the biggest douche in the Imperium. I think the Lion took that title from him quite convincingly and continues to do so. But he's certainly up there with him, near him. But yes, he's the douche the Imperium need.
Yeah, unfortunately so.
Okie dokie. Who's up next? Your number 2.
My number 2 is the Lemon Russ.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Okay, why him over the others?
Okay, so I mean, I do think it's a fantastic model. It was probably where I was planning out my next Primarch that I wanted to paint personally. He was pretty much up there. And the only thing that stopped me from painting him was the idea I had to do with Fulgrim. So, because I had a good theory, a good setting that I wanted to use for Fulgrim, I sort of canned my Russ idea.
Okay.
So, Love the model, love the pose. I mean, I think there's always a certain thing about the newest Primarch that always sort of tempts me in as well. I mean, I know obviously now he's the second newest because we've got Magnus.
Yeah.
But if you put Magnus and Russ in front of me, I probably would want to paint Russ over the two. And I just think he's a fantastic model. I'm getting a little bit of a thing for Space Wolves at the moment, and I'm sort of, and I think the more I think about Space Wolf, it seemed to be this dark Space Wolf colour scheme. Sort of the dark grey sort of colour with the red logos. I'm really sort of liking that at the moment. And Russ for me is just a beautiful model. And there are some cracking paint jobs being done at the moment. There's one for Flame On Miniatures. He's doing one in non-metallics. Looks amazing. Andy Wardle's doing a Russ, and I don't think we've seen all of it yet. We've seen panels of it, but again, that looks amazing. So, there's certainly some great painters doing some great things with that model at the moment. Yeah,
again, there's a lot of dynamism in that pose.
I think it's just, again, it's sort of Sam's sort of cracked it with what you imagine the model would be doing.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I would imagine Russ be doing, like charging forward.
Yeah.
Just trying to get knee deep in the fight.
But it's not quite just charging forwards, is it? It's more like, he's more not stalking. He's more like, he's
hunting.
He's hunting. Yeah, I was trying to think of a better word than that, because he's not prowling either. He's in full motion, but it's not the reckless charge of Angron.
Yeah, he's not just.
Angron's just head forwards, just whatever's in my way is going to go. But Russ is there seeking out his prey.
Yes, it's more tactical, isn't it?
Russ? Which is pretty cool. And the only issue I have with the base for Magnus and Russ is it almost looks like Russ is too close to Magnus for the position he's in. But he would need a big
with the way he's sort of moving.
Yeah, it's like he's not quite ready to strike yet. He's maybe a few paces off where he is positioned on that model. But it's a great sculpt. Putting the little bits and pieces together, that's one of those things where you get a small bit of paper with a picture of the model and just arrows pointing where the bits go. And it's like, I needed to photograph the picture and zoom in to check that the pieces I had were exactly right to those pieces.
I mean, this is a classic Sam Egan thing, isn't it? He's an old school sculptor. He's doing all of this with putty and knives and needles and whatever else he's using, and a lot of his stuff has tiny little fiddly bits that have to stick, and often you get them, you go, where the hell does that go? And you really, really have to scour the model to find out and look at the instructions and find out where all those little bits stick on and get the placement right. Yeah,
and that's fine. It's a Primarch at the end of the day. It's not an issue. I'm happy with that process because I think there's potential with Primarchs to lose something with a full digital sculpt anyway.
Yes,
potential. I'm not saying it would happen, but there's potential for that to happen. Cool. Okay, well, I'm going to move on to my number 2, and that is Mr. Perturabo. So, Iron Warriors, I never cared a jot. For years and years, all Iron Warriors meant to me were 40k players taking extra heavy support options because it made your army harder. And then I read, Graham's take on Perturabo, and then Chris had written some bits about him, and then someone else had written some bits about him, and I was like, hold on. This guy thought he was doing the right thing. And again, like the Khan, he talking about people making the wrong decisions but keeping their honour in the White Scars. He sided and realised they he'd backed the wrong horse, and then kind of felt that he was kind of in there. But actually, when you read other accounts, it's like, because I started to get to this point, as I've said many times, that I've thought about doing Iron Warriors and potentially still would one day. And then I read the actual Primarch novel of his time, on his home planet and Olympia and everything that went on there. And again, he was treated kind of like a lot of these Primarchs where he was used but actually he made some horrific decisions, and I mean horrific in the nature of the consequences for other people and stuff like that. And there was just unbending and kind of willful and everything else as well. And I was like, whoa, hold on. He's made to be sympathetic in Angel Exterminatus. And there's certain aspects of it, that definitely he felt he was getting into something different than what he was. And he thought he was going to move away from being the workhorse of the Imperium and just became Horus's workhorse instead. But actually, when you look back on it, maybe that's the only role he could ever fill, even if he was left to his own devices. So, yeah. But that's maybe lessened my appeal to maybe do an Iron Warriors force, but it's actually added to the character of Perturabo for me, who, I guess to say, was someone I just didn't even consider caring about years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I suppose we could quite easily flick onto my number one, because obviously my number one is Perturabo as well.
Is that just because he won you a sword?
Well, there is that, yes. But again, though, for me, obviously, I did listen to some of the books, and I did really like the way. I mean, back in how you say back in the day you had a rough idea of what the Primarchs were about. Oh, this Primarch did this and this Primarch did that. For me, he was just the siege guy, and when I think it was Angel Exterminatus, one where he's and he's got all these he's got his little labyrinth, and he's got all of his little inventions and stuff that he's built, and the little clockwork Titan sort of thing that sits around and stuff, and you realise that he's much more than just someone who's there to rip things down. He's much more of a creator, and I really liked the way he was portrayed in that.
Yeah, it's excellent. But as I say, that's one side of the story. Maybe there might be more of the story to him. But again, some of the Iron Warriors characters are some of the ones I love the most, like Dantiok, and even going into 40k, the way they act as well. So
yeah,
that all plays a part for me, because there are aspects of their fathers at the end of the day. Perturabo's a really interesting character, and it'll be good to read kind of not just the siege, but in the build up to it, and how he's been used and how he feels, and particularly kind of what happens to him post Heresy, because we know a few little bits, and he disappears for quite a while. And one of my favourite things about Perturabo is he didn't join for the power and everything else that could be granted to him, and Talon deals with that quite well. But at some point, there is a seduction there, that the Eye of Terror has been featured in his kind of dreams and everything else from a very young age. But he was kind of almost very logical in the way he made his decision. And at some point it just a bit like Mortarion, really. He was one of the people who spoke out against the use of psychers, and was very in favour of the edict at Nicaea, who ends up becoming a huge psyker. So there has to be a character journey for him to get to that point, which is one of those interesting bits to read, which is cool. Awesome. So yeah, that's your number one as well, and the models. The model's great. That was the first really big base, wasn't it?
That was the base that maybe I think took bases too far.
Yeah, and I think they've come down from that, but it is cool. He is, just like standing on top of that knight. It is fantastic. I do love it. Model.
I love the way, obviously, it's what the first and only so far computer, like 3D sculpted Primarch, and that does have its benefits as well as its negatives. Obviously, it's great that you get this really nice, easy, detailed how to put together pamphlet. You also get bits that are very sort of easily taken apart, like all the leg joints are all separate and things like that. So again, makes it very easy for sub-assembly and painting. But of course, I do think there is a certain amount of detail that you lose in that process, because although it's a very detailed model, it's nowhere near as packed with detail as some of the Sam Egan sculpts.
Sure, yeah. I also think he's quite stationary. You know, he's set as well. And I do think there's potential that computer generated models are better in those kind of poses.
Yes, yeah, like you mean where they work better.
And some people can debate that, but that's, you know, and it's a minor thing. I'm not saying that you can't do it, but I do think it helps when they're in those kind of poses as opposed to the really dynamic ones. But, you know, I'm sure to be proved wrong in certain places as well on that one. But yeah, no, it's a fantastic model. Okay, so my number one. No, absolutely no prizes for guessing this one. It is the Russ. And it's weird because I'm such a Space Wolves fan and have been for years. It was almost like, oh, is it, you know, it's Russ, but is it Russ? And I kind of had to sit back and think. And actually, I think he was like one of the Primarchs who we knew more about going into the Heresy, or we thought we knew more about. You know, more had been written about Russ than a lot of the others. You know, we've got the whole Dark Angel story, we've got all the drinking, we've got all the, you know, Prospero and everything like that. And actually what we got was a very different Space Wolves. We got a Russ who I honestly believe is one of the more kind of self-aware Primarchs. Post Prospero, post Alexis and things like that, or during that period of time, he spends time out, and it's detailed in Wolf King. He spends time out considering what his Legion has become, what they are, where they fit in this new universe that is now kind of operating. And that kicked up a lot of fuss with Space Wolves fans. It was like, oh, why is Russ doing this? He's you know, he's turning into a, you know, I don't want to use some of the words that we used, but, you know, he's not being a man about it. And I was like, hold on. That's maybe a societal thing. That's maybe a cultural thing where, sometimes we look down on people for inaction. You know, stand up in front of them and, you know, beat your chest is the manly thing to do. Where actually, what he probably did was took that time to come up with the right decisions. Or a right decision, shall we say. And he seemed to come out of that stronger, with the Legion coming out of that stronger. Yeah, you know, the Space Wolves go through the Heresy taking a kicking because they keep running into fights. You know, they just don't stop. Whether it's the right thing to do or not, that is how Russ works. So he will continue to do it. It doesn't matter if he doesn't think, you know, if the numbers are against him. He's like, no, this is my job, I will do it. But we see a change of him, like, already in the Heresy. We see him playing games against the Sigillite, kind of discussing what's going on. These are things that people don't attribute to Leman Russ, because we find out that he's been playing a game. Right? And people view the Wolves as these savages and blah, blah, blah. And then it turns out, well, actually, yes, they play up to it because they don't care if people think that about them. Because actually that kind of gives them the edge over them. So
and they like the fact that people think that of them because it makes them think they've got one up on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Russ is even more aware at various points. He's like, maybe we've gone too far, you know. And I'm not saying that other Primarchs don't do it, but I think we've just seen it a bit more from Russ. He's very aware of this thing, and at some point, you know, he knows that if anyone's going to take down Horus, it probably should, like, he should be the one to attempt it. So he starts setting up a plan for that, even though he might not be the best kind of option, but he's willing to, like a lot of them, he's willing to put himself in that way. I think that's fantastic. I think the Primarchs novel about him, and the Lion having their fight, again, it actually starts off post-Heresy, and it's a tale being told that happens during the Heresy, and has bits of on Terra, literally just post Heresy as well. And some of those bits are real kind of eye openers into the way he acts and everything else. To the point where, we got Guilliman back in 40k, and there's lots of chat about Primarchs coming back, and a lot of it seems to be just, hearsay and wish listing. But I think Russ could come in as a really awesome counterpoint to Guilliman in 40k, potentially. I mean, who knows? This is me wish listing. If anyone was to come back, I think Russ would be amazing, because he is aggressive. He is always on the front foot. That is the way he deals with things. Is there a certain amount of hypocrisy with him and his abuse of the Thousand Sons? Probably. But they also know that control is a major thing. I really have loved what they've done with him. There was a danger it was just going to be the caricature more than almost any of the others.
Yeah, and I think they've been very good at not doing that.
They've been very good at not doing that with all of them. But, a couple have their moments. Part of me likes the fact that a lot of Space Force players don't like the way that Russ has been portrayed, because I'm like, well, brilliant. They've given him more character than you thought they were going to have. A lot of them are, basically there's a lot of Space Wolf players who think that Space Wolves should be running around kicking everyone's rears, because they are the executioners, and all that jazz. Executioners in bunny ears, because again, debates about that, whatever. But there's very much kind of this machismo around them. Oh yeah, Russ does this, does that. Actually, he's a Primarch. They've all got their abilities, they've all got their attributes, and they've all got their weaknesses as well.
Yeah,
but
indeed they have.
Yeah, I really love what they've done with them. And then the model came out, and it's fantastic. And then the rules came out, and they're awesome. He's never going to be an Alfarius helping 18 other units work together better. But if you get into combat with him and it's mano a mano, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I do love the fact that his rules were just jaw-dropping at the time. But since then, I think he hasn't been as scary as most people thought he would.
No, because it's tradition, as is tradition with Primarchs. It's very rarely about the two guys who are attacking each other. It's about the squads they come with.
Yes, yeah. It's often like, well, any one of those with a 10 cataphractile power fist unit is gonna be about the unit more than the Primarch. Yeah,
and people know that they can't let Russ get anywhere near them. It's like, you can take your chances with some of the other Primarch battles. It's like, it's not in my favour, but I've got a chance. Yeah, obviously Kurz is never going to charge into Horus more than once. But you can take your chance with a few of the others, and then, Vulcan can handle himself against a lot of the others. But Russ, mano a mano, will kill almost every Primarch, and some of them pretty quickly. So, yeah, people make sure it doesn't happen.
Yes.
I mean, there are still
again, that's real life when you play a game.
Yeah.
You don't just run two things at each other and go, let's roll dice and see which one wins.
I haven't seen as many people running them with the full setup, with the wolves and everything else, which, Jason used against me, which was pretty awesome, actually. I think if you wanted to run him and actually get him into combat, then you're looking at something like that is pretty hard to take down. But you pretty soon then you're kind of heading towards any Primarch with big retinue with thingy, and you're kind of heading towards Death Star anyway, which it's funny that, it's not talked about a lot. But yeah, he's cool. He's just absolutely cool. And I know there's going to be grief from people for this, going to get sly remarks and whatever. But, we're talking about a guy who, last time we saw him in the books, was in an interesting position, and I won't spoil that for anyone who hasn't read Corax. But we also didn't know a huge amount beyond Prospero of what he did. So, yeah, there's loads of cool stuff.
There we lovely Primarch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I must admit, going through this, I pulled out kind of list of Primarchs, and I was like, you know what? Most of the traitor Primarchs, I just got huge issues with the reasons they turned. So I was like, yeah, Lorgar, no, just, kind of get a grip. You know, Horus, yeah, there's a bit of play going on in there, but again, it's like, really? Could you not have waited? Could you not have just given a bit more time? Magnus was his own worst enemy, was always going to happen. Fulgrim, again, you know, his own worst enemy. Mortarion, I do feel a little bit sorry for at times, but I'm like, really? Again, you're whining about stuff that is not really, you know, some of the things he whines about, you know, were deals he made, were things that he should have known better, and that kind of carries on. Kurz was an interesting one. Kurz was potentially going to be there as being a really interesting character, but I almost think there's just too much of him already in the books and everything else. But
yeah, there's a lot of Kurz, isn't there?
Yeah, he does a lot of stuff around. Most of it's around Imperium Secundus and that, and with the Dark Angels. But he's had his moment to shine, kind of thing. And you know, maybe I'm almost a little bit cursed out for a little bit. I think he'll go a little bit quiet for a while, but we shall see. Anyway, yes, you got any more to add on our Primarch chat?
Not particularly, no. No, I'd be interested to know what. Have you got any bets on what the next Primarch will be that's released?
It's Dawn.
Are we definitely Dawn?
It's the one Sam's working on. So unless someone else is working on one, I don't believe they are. It is Dawn.
They're going to get anyone else to start doing that again. That obviously was it.
I did mention that I did put that question across to Sam, and he kind of said, well, you know, just turnover of staff at the moment has been pretty large, and you know, they've had a fair few sculptors come in, and they've had, you know, a few people leave, so it's a case of times and everything else. Getting someone up to level, making sure they're on the right kind of path system, work well with it. Who knows? Yeah, they might have done it. They might have kind of decided to do it. I'm not privy to that information, unfortunately. So, you know, for whatever people say, I have a couple of friends at Forge World. It's not like I've got a direct line, and they certainly wouldn't be feeding me too much information.
So, sometimes the opposite.
In fact, sometimes I just get absolute no's when other people get it. But there we go. Such is life. Awesome. Okay, in which case we'll take a break and we'll come back and close out the show. This episode has been a little bit shorter, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Having kind of reviewed last episode, I think we should have split that over 2 different episodes, but such is life. These things happen.
Quality, not quantity, Greg.
Yeah, something like that. Absolutely. There may have been, in talking about that, there may have been some sound issues on this episode. I haven't gone through editing yet, so we'll try and take it out there, but we had some issues with the setup and computers and that kind of jazz, which pops its head up every now and then. So fingers crossed. Apologies if it hasn't kind of been edited out, but tried my best.
Can't edit all of me out, can you?
Well, I could quite happily sometimes. But yeah, excellent stuff. Yeah, so we're going to keep it nice and short for this episode, and nice and relaxed. Yes. Which is sometimes not so bad a thing. Next episode, hoping to have our next Sons of Heresy section. So fingers crossed you'll get a good lump in next episode anyway. So just trying to finalise that one. Okay, you wanted to talk about your model.
Yes, so I think at the start of the show we mentioned about the winner of the auction and how I was going to get that posted. I actually got in contact with a guy who's Dave Kelly who won the auction, and I said, where do you want it posted to? And it actually was only about half an hour's drive away. So this week I jumped in the car. He was at home on a weekday, skiving off work because he was meant to be working from home. But as I walked into his office come hobby room, he just had the new 40k out building Primarchs Space Marines. So hard at work, as you can imagine. And I dropped the model off and we had a good 2-hour chat about painting and hobby and all sorts of bits and pieces. So
well, that's pretty cool.
Nice way of dropping the model off as well. You know, it was quite enjoyable.
Yeah, that's all right. Meeting strange men from the internet, it's always good.
Yeah, exactly. Knock on someone's door. Hi, I'm so and so.
Yeah, too right. I'm internet celebrity.
It wasn't you. It wasn't you.
No, yeah, fair point. Well put.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. It is handy when it's just like that. It just makes life so much easier as well.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
It's nice, and that extra £5 for the charity because I haven't got to worry about postage. And it was nice to be able to chat to Dave and talk about the hobby and all different pieces because obviously it made it. eBay's a bit impersonal, isn't it, really? You put something on there, you get a lot of random people bidding, and sometimes you get a few odd, weird questions come out the woodwork, and then post the stuff off and wait for a weird, a bit of a rating or feedback to come from it, and that's about your lot. So it was quite nice to see the face behind the bidding.
Excellent. Was he happy with it?
He was happy with it, or I hope he was happy with it. If he wasn't happy, he certainly didn't tell me. So
good man. He hid it well.
Yeah, he hid it really well.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, next time it'll be really helpful if you live nice and close.
And this won't be the case every time. So if you do live like in America somewhere, I'm not jumping on a plane to hand deliver. But it was very useful.
Lightweight. That's what you are. A lightweight.
I tell you, if the podcast could warrant the plane fare, I might go and do it.
Yeah, we'll need to find that millionaire back.
Yes. Definitely.
So,
we're still looking for him. We haven't found him yet.
Or her. Let's not be sexist.
Or her. Yeah, no, yeah, let's be PC.
Yeah, it's all good. Awesome. So I wanted just to shout out again the couple of events that are coming up. We're in a weird kind of time in the Heresy. We talked about it a couple of times now with the different editions coming out. Games Workshop events will sell out kind of thing, or sell well, at least. Partly because they're getting run by Games Workshop. Always amazes me that how many people don't even consider independent events, but that's a different thing, whatever. It's all good. But I
find it interesting how many Games Workshop events are run, and then where people say, I don't like Games Workshop events, I don't like how they run this, I don't like how they do that, and yet obviously they always still sell out. So
yeah, so this the weekend before this comes out, they had their doubles, their team event up at Warhammer World, and there were I've seen not much kind of come back from it, but I have seen there were some armies that were less, of a lesser standard than one would wish to play against, and that some of the armies were certainly on the harder scale, and maybe some of those players weren't particularly in line with the way they play the game compared to the majority of people there, to the point where a few people dropped out on the Sunday. Now, I don't always take that as a fair judge because I've seen people moan about stuff with no real cause to so many times. But it's interesting that people will continue to go back there and won't look at other events quite as much.
I think the independent scene now is booming. It seems to be, but I might be completely wrong.
There are plenty of events, I say this next 4 or 5 months to see how well they sell, because most of them obviously were done before the announcements were made, tickets were sold, and you put a 30-man event on, you were selling it out pretty quick. So, we'll see. So we got First Blood. This is 2nd and 3rd of September at Element Games. This is £40, and it's Element Games has got a cracking venue. They're in Stockport. There's good links to it and everything else, so all that's covered. There's a few hotels, one hotel just over the road, and a few hotels nearby as well. And I'm running this kind of like the same style we've been running the previous events. You've heard me talk about all people who have attended they can expect that same kind of approach to the games. So everyone playing the same game for 5 rounds, but the ability to throw rules down and base matchups and all that jazz that we try and do to maintain people playing roughly the same stuff if they've got a particularly hard or soft army.
I personally thought it worked really well at the last event. I felt as though everything balanced out quite well.
Within reason. You are working uphill sometimes with some of the matchups and some of the players and some of the armies, so that's pretty standard. I have yet to put out the pack with the scenarios. This one I will be putting out a scenario pack at some point soon. But again, it's not really about bringing the army that does the best in all those scenarios. It's about bringing an army, usually with a theme and playing what you want to play and things like that as well. So do remember that. And of course, as usual, Malayan Codex Demons and everything that can be done around those things and the militia cults list, being able to take them. This time I'm giving a bonus to army lists that are in and correct. In on time and correct.
Oh.
So there are, this is the big problem with army lists. There's going to be reroll tokens, or at least one anyway, that can be used.
Yeah, good idea.
And if you don't get your army list in on time, and it must be in the body of an email in the format shown, because there were 2 army lists that we just couldn't read, frankly, last time. Then you'll get a reroll, and it's a single reroll, but you can save it for those big moments. And it might just mean that character survives or what have you. I didn't want it to be, I'm not actually a fan of giving huge amounts of rerolls, like people can give away, dice that allow rerolls and things like that. I don't like doing it too much, but I think a single reroll, and because it's a narrative event as well, it can play into
it's not going to throw it completely out the window, is it?
No, but hopefully that's a little bit of encouragement for, those people to get them in. And hopefully it's going to be the normal kind of same thing. You can grudge players, and all the usual kind of awards as well. We are going to use the FAQ I've written up. I am going to review that. I think I'm going to have to chat to a few people. We've got a couple of people in mind to really kind of bearing in mind where we are. I didn't know if we were going to have to do it fully, so now I know that we're staying with 7th, and we'll push forwards with that. But as I say, the scenarios are due to go up soon. This is the first event in the Malrain system. So for all my events outside of like the London Heresy, which has got its own backstory, they're all going to be tied into this one system until we decide that system. So First Blood is in September, and then in November in Derby in the Roundhouse, the one I've talked about before, we've got Blood and Glory, and that is also going to be set in the Malrain system.
Oh.
And the events of the first First Blood will actually kind of lead into this one as well. And that's the idea I want to do with all my events pushing forwards until this whole system's been basically decided.
Brilliant.
So First Blood is 3,000 points. Blood and Glory I'm changing to 2,500s for, shake it up a little bit. And this one I'm going to do, this is one where I have talked about it before. What we're going to do with the scenarios in this one is it's going to be a progression campaign thing. So if the Loyalists win the first game, they might be pushing the traitors back. The traitors might be fighting a retreat, and then if the traitors win that game, then maybe they'll counterattack. That kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. So trying to forge a story and like progression.
Yeah,
with
forge a narrative
outcomes.
through it, which means that you won't get the scenarios beforehand, because the scenarios will be fully dependent on what happens through the rounds.
That's quite exciting. I thought it was something similar a while back, and thought it'd be really good if you could match up players and tables by what had previously happened on the table, and that's sort of a similar thing.
Yeah.
And I really like that idea.
I think the key to that will be having utilising the general well-known scenarios and then adding a couple of bits in, because like things like changing deployment maybe and stuff like that, because if you throw a brand new scenario at people, then
They're going to spend half an hour discussing it and trying to work out how it affects their army.
It's going to be really confusing and stuff. So, I've got the fine details of that to work out, but the overall plan for that is pretty much there. This is I think Ben's still in talks with GW, but GW are going to be there with their TV. They put a post on it on Warhammer Community saying they're going to be there as well, which is really cool. Think they might even be supplying the prizes, and then Ben's in talk with them for even more stuff. As I say, this is hopefully the start of a convention growing out of this, which will be really awesome. Tickets, I know I said the tickets should be up on sale. Ben's actually moving house at the moment, so he's got a lot of work going on trying to get his new place ready. So hopefully after the weekend after release, so start of July, tickets should be up for sale. There have been a few people asking for that, which is really cool. Let's say that's going to be in Derby, just up the road from Nottingham as well. So yeah, and we're going to have to see what happens with this Malwain system, and then I'm going to populate it with a number of planets. I've got a few details worked out, so hopefully it's going to be running for a little while. And I think all the events I run, with the exception of the London Heresy, will take part in that thing, and hopefully people who come to multiple events will see that progression and maybe even play major parts in it and benefit from kind of having seen things. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how far we can take it with the resources we've got, frankly.
Exciting.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll have to, it's all that fun stuff of trying to get all the pack done for as soon as possible. There is hope. There is hope for Blood and Glory as well. I need to talk to a couple of people to try and have some smaller events along the side. I know Ben's doing it with Age of Sigmar. I'll probably have to find someone else to run it. So hopefully we're going to have maybe a one-day event, whether it's Zone Mortalis or just a Vanguard Strike or anything like that. Then we'll have to see. So keep an eye on the Facebooks and Twitters for that, and I'll let you know.
Cool.
Groovy. But talking about events, I got contacted from Mr. Sean Freed over at Seize the Initiative, and they've got an event coming up. And now, here we go. The War Master's attempt to scour Brundius Prime was halted by the valiant, yet beleaguered Loyalist forces led by the Imperial Fists. I won't read it all out, but they've got a 3-round, 2,500 point narrative event with room for 14 players. So if you want to get on this, you might have to be quick. They also have a Zone Mortalis table, so 1,000 point zone list from the same faction will also be needed. This is Sunday, September 24th, and it is at Sparta Games in Omaha. So it's a long way from me. I won't be going over there for the day.
Really?
But for $20 to get in, that's not bad, is it?
A bargain.
For a three round event, 14 players, there is something nice about having that 14, 16, 18 kind of player number. As we've said before, where you can be a lot more present as an organiser.
You can really adapt to what the games are, what's happening, and people are playing. Like, you can be a lot more personal.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'll do is I'll copy and paste all the details, including the bit of lore, and put that in the show notes. But if you want to enter, you send your the money's done through Sparta Games, and your lists go to seizetheinitiativepodcast@gmail.com. And if you've got any questions, then I would get hold of them, because they're also talking about a separate ticket that comes with a meal as well. It's a bit different when you're in a place like that for one day. It's not always possible for them to do food alongside it, but that's cool.
Yes,
that is cool.
Sounds very good.
There we go. And you're off to a non-gaming event over here, aren't you?
Yes. So I'm one of my not a New Year's resolution, because we're halfway through the year, but I decided that I'm going to go to some painting events, like tuition and lessons. I just felt as though, there's a lot out there I'd like to experience, and there's so many people doing lessons now. So I'm going to start doing those. So the first one I've picked to do is at Alpha Games, and it's Richard Gray's lessons that he's doing over a weekend, and he's doing free weathering and freehand. Two things I do a bit of, but not a great amount of, and he is the absolute pinnacle of freehand. If you've ever seen any of his work,
it's quite useful.
He's very, very good at it. So I'm looking forward to that one. That'll be my first one, and I'm going to try and do some others along the road. I'm going to try and do like an airbrushing one and bits. I'm just going to try and do lots of different things and see where I get.
Awesome. Yeah, that's something that's becoming more and more popular. So the airbrushing courses have been around for a while now, and these tend to be, in England, US, quite a few different places you can go. It's not like it's one person doing them. There are a few you can find out. And then these actual painting courses. So Element hold a few. I think they've got Siege Studios up there soon. And they had, who else did they have up there recently? I can't remember.
Element had David Soper, I believe,
that's right, yeah.
And that was one that I missed out on, and that's probably what kicked me off thinking, do you know what, I want to get to some of these.
Cool.
Because I really want to get to one of his classes, so
yeah,
that's what sort of prompted it.
And that's it, and there's something out there for everyone now, so if you want your basic starters, they're out there, you can go and find them, and then here we got someone who's won a sword, who's looking at a different aspect of painting to try out, and I suppose that also shows that it doesn't matter how well you've done, there's always something new.
Well, you're never too good to learn, are you? And even like, I sort of do you know how you have professional golf players? Yep. They have like tuition from ex-pros and things.
Yeah.
It's like they might be professionals, but they still have lessons.
Yeah, even if it's just another, it's another tool, it's another style, it's another thing you can bring. Just to mix it up, as we say, different miniatures need different styles and all that kind of jazz. Yeah, but certainly, I've yet to find kind of a class that I think will help me paint quicker.
Yeah, the speed painting course, no one's covered those.
No, and that's mainly because I know that I'm just physically slow with it, with the actual getting paint on the model. But if you are looking to improve, the only problem that, be aware that when you improve, you'll want to then do that level for everything, and your old stuff will not look as good.
Yes, yeah, I've heard many people say that they've done a course, really dramatically improved their style, then had to redo an army because got a couple of pieces that are really good and a couple of pieces that are nowhere near as good, and they redo it all.
Or even just selling an old army, looking at it and going, "Oh, that could be so much better." That's a weird thing in that that's got nothing to do with how good you are as a painter. I've actually put away my Primarchs Marines. I can't remember if I said this last time, because I was trying to paint them in a really quick style, and I kind of liked the colour scheme. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was stunning, but it was good. It was quick, but something was off, and I was like, I just don't know what it is. And I realised it was like, I was looking at it going, it's not good enough. And I know I can paint better than that, and I should be doing it, but I don't want to do it for those models, for that style of what I was trying to achieve. I was like, oh great, so I can't paint this quick in this style. Now, it may be that I find another style, and I think I may have, from one of Duncan's videos actually. So I might have to revisit that, but in the style I was painting them, it wasn't enough, and it frustrated me. So,
It's one of my big problems, actually, because when I start painting something, I have in the back of my mind, right, keep it quick, keep it simple, let's just get this done. And it starts off like that, then it devolves into how much detail can I squeeze into this, and then it slows down, and then I'm doing the full paint job.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm lucky in a way that I'm a kind of medium level, and there are a number of ways to achieve what I'm trying to achieve. So I just need to find the one that gets me to the level I want to be at, which is medium, okay, tabletop standard. So, yeah, we shall see on that one. We did have some feedback on the how to be a noob at events. just we've had some feedback saying they really like the segment actually, which is cool. Hopefully that continues. People still like that. But we had one of the guys who came to one of my events who was, or is, should we say, suffers from epilepsy. Now, this was something when he messaged me at the first event, I was like, oh yeah, never thought about that. But this is a guy who, has medication, doesn't actually have, hasn't suffered from a attack in a while at that point, and it has it, as under control as it can be. But there is still a chance for him to have a fit at the event. And he let me know beforehand, just so that someone knew what was going on. Because, you can't, in theory, I suppose, when we're looking at these events, in theory, we should be fully insured and blah, blah, blah. If you're doing it at a gaming hall, you can possibly come under their insurance and stuff. But ideally, you want someone who's first aid trained as well. Again, if you're doing it at a gaming hall, I wouldn't be surprised that they have their own first aid trained guys. And I've got a little bit with the fire service. But other people around might not be aware. And if you've got a condition, whether it's epilepsy, whether it's, diabetes, any number of things, it's at least make it so that whoever's in charge is aware.
That's quite a tricky one, isn't it? Yeah,
and also Dave made sure that I had a contact number as well.
Yeah.
Because that's, just as important as making sure they're all right is letting everyone know, getting kind of people there and all that stuff. So it's a very simple thing. Things like food allergies. I actually ask at my events, if you've got any food allergies, let me know so we can sort it out beforehand. No one ever does. It was only when I was like, okay, has anyone got any food allergies? Because I've got this cake I bought and this has got I can't eat nuts. I was like, right. That's kind of what I meant when I said food allergies. Yeah, good job I didn't try and force this cake down your face. So, those things as well, which are kind of, can be pretty serious.
Yeah, and I suppose asking the questions the first thing if you're running the event, like, does anyone have these? And then making sure that I suppose if you've got these allergies and these issues, you're probably quite used to telling people about them or making people aware. But yeah, another important thing to consider, I suppose, also could be other things, like if you suffer from asthma or all this sort of stuff, making sure you've got all your medication with you, and you maybe let someone know that, I suffer from asthma, so if you see me gasping for air, let someone know.
Yeah, there's a whole scope of things that could be taken into account. I don't think, as an organizer of an event, you can't assume everything, but it is worth, from our point of view as well, just remembering that that's actually probably part of our responsibility.
Yes, yeah, no, if you're organising these events, it's not just about getting the games right and making sure people know what scenario they're playing. You're effectively looking after them for a day or 2 days or a period of time, aren't you?
Yeah, and, they're adults generally, so that's not so much of an issue. But we're looking at having, there is a responsibility there, just to be aware. And as I say, there is a difference between holding it in an event place and holding it out, hiring a hall, where then it's all on you.
Yes.
So yeah, I think we're at the end. We can just do the normal shout out. So if you've got feedback about the show, you've got topics you want to be answered, we've had some requests for some really cool topics and things like that. So we're going to throw them into all our awesome stage of preparation that we do. Yeah. And we'll get working on those. Sometimes they might be moulding into other topics or things like that, but we'll certainly have a look at it. You can email greg@theimperialtruth.com.
Neil@theimperialtruth.com.
Indeed. And then we got Facebook. Don't forget we got the group and the page. So the page for information and the group for general chat. People who are in there are pretty good. at helping each other out. And you can also, contact me through the page on Facebook. That's fine. And then Twitter as well. So Imperial_Truth, and then at Child of Fang for me.
And I'm at Neil Paints on Twitter, Instagram, and neilpaints.com for my blog.
Oh yeah, have you updated that since?
I've done a little bit, yeah. I'm good. I was trying to do one post a week, but I think I'll just do it as and when I've got something. I won't be like regimented and say just trying to write a load of nonsense.
Sure.
I'll try and keep it for when I've got something I want to say.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I've tried writing some stuff down. I find it quite difficult to kind of collate what I'm doing, and I tend to have to ramble everything down and then try and bring it back. I find it quite, I think it's something that you do, the more you do, the better you get at it, naturally. But you get more comfortable with it. I've been talking actually, Michael, who comes on the show and does the books bit, has gone through and edited a post for me, which I'm doing for something. Hopefully we'll see that up online soon, and it'll be pretty obvious when it is, but we'll make sure that it's shared around anyway. But it's a very different thing, writing down rather than talking. You've got so much more space to talk.
Yeah, and I think I found it quite easy writing posts, but I haven't gone particularly long with them. I kept them quite short.
That's unbelievably, I find that quite difficult.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, how many words have I written? Oh, that's quite a few. So being concise, the problem is wanting to get all the information down where, and it's different for a blog, your own blog, you've got much more control, so you could just spread that over. But I know that when I'm doing that kind of thing, I've usually got one shot, exposure or a topic for this person. So it's like, well, I don't want to leave anything out, but at some point you have to leave stuff out.
Yes, yeah.
But cool. Coolio. I've got Instagram as well. I've actually getting people to like my stuff on Instagram.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's all good. I've got most of my mechanic and paint, as I said, so I'm starting on my nights for a bit of a break, which means getting slightly different skill set done.
Yes, I've got my night that I want to crack out soon, actually.
Yeah, I've got 5 on the shelf, I think, that need painting, and some more to buy.
Lots to do.
No, lots to do, but it's good. We're pushing on. I'm about 7 or 9 hours behind on the 1 hour a night.
Oh, okay, that's not too bad.
No, so hopefully this weekend I'll get some time to crack on, and all the time I'm within that kind of period, I know that I can have a really good session one day and catch up quite a lot. So it's just trying not to let myself get too far behind, which is cool. So when we've recorded this, I'll put the old put the editing mode on and get the brushes out.
Yes. Sounds good.
Yeah. If we made less mistakes, I could edit quicker and have more time with the brush in my hand.
There's so many mistakes.
Such is life. Yeah. It's all good. Brilliant. A quick thing. So my other project, people have asked me about when Fanatic's coming. It is coming. It got delayed because of the people that I'm asking to help out with certain things. They're doing this out of, their friends. They're doing deals for friends. So I don't want to push them because they're using their spare time to help me out. But it will come. I've got it all kind of planned out for the first maybe 1 or 2 shows. Just getting some cool designs going, and yeah, I'll let you know again, and I'll retweet the link, and I'll set up a Facebook page and all that jazz. But it will be there. But I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome. Oh, yeah, and don't forget, also, we talked about it right at the top about the Podcasters Against Duchenne's and all that jazz. You can still give money for that. $35 gets you an entry into the raffle to win one of the night households. And if you're on the Facebook groups, you'll have seen the pictures being dotted around of the different night households being done by various people. I think Freddie's gone for, is it Freddie that's doing it? I think it's Freddie who's actually painting it. I could be wrong. Having a blank mind time, but he's chosen a very similar colour scheme to my nights, actually, with the blue. They probably look better, to be fair, which is good. But yeah, that's cool. So you can still go and give money there, and I'll try and put the links in the show notes as well. Awesome. That's probably the longest close off we've ever done.
Yep.
But we're done. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Greg.
You have been listening to The Imperial Truth.